As embodied beings, we live and have always lived in the reign of Dionysus. This deep existential trauma confines us to fragmentation and division, as conveyed by the Orphic myth of the tearing apart and cannibalizing of Dionysus Agrios by the Titans. Our origin and our continued existence breathe within this substrate of strife and conflict. It is for this reason that unity and wholeness continually evade us. No matter our political, religious, spiritual, or secular doctrines, we yearn for a unity where tensions are dissipated. Even the very idea of a conjunctio oppositorum is a resolution into a higher synthesis that promises to resolve all dualities. But our projects inevitably fail because our thoughts themselves are divided, along with our sensations. In a way, for Neoplatonists, Dionysus signifies the soul's distribution and scattering into the world of manifestation. It is through this act of cosmogenesis and dispersal of divine unity that multiplicity arises. But paradoxically, it is precisely through this victim of dissolution and dismemberment that all salvation and deliverance from limitation and separation can be found. Olympiodorus unequivocally states, quote, Dionysus is responsible for deliverance. He continues in addressing the reader, striving after deliverance from unlawful ancestors, but thou, having power over them, you will deliver whomever you wish from difficult suffering and limitless frenzy. These unlawful ancestors, the progonon athemiston, have been understood not only as the departed mortals that preceded your existence, but as the titans that incurred the sin of murder and cannibalism. This process whereby the cause of the descent is the same as the means of reascent can be echoed in alchemical and mythological depictions across millennia. This is Pseudo-Democritus's dictum that nature delights in nature, nature conquers nature, nature masters nature. Similarly, in Wagner's Parsifal, the wound that Amfortas suffers is that which, quote, can be healed only by the spear that smote it. We also speak of the pharmakon, which is both the poison and the cure. Dionysus proceeds from Zeus and represents the unity of division. But one might ask why the Titans chose to mutilate Dionysus in such a manner. According to Proclus, the monad of Dionysus contains within itself divisive powers that seek to reduce the unity of multiplicity, served by the titanic forces that continually divide. But elaborating on this analysis, Damascius, the last Neoplatonist from the 6th century BC, suggests, in fact, that the Titans seek to continue the demiurgic activities by further and further subdivisions of the manifested world, in direct opposition to Dionysus's rule. This motivating drive is the, quote, desire to be a separate self, cut off from the continuity of what human beings share with superior and inferior forms of being. It is also true that the tearing apart of Dionysus signifies a rupture in the cosmic unfolding that reveals the divine human soul within the chain of being, thereby connecting the human to their superior immortal entities, and importantly, to beings of an inferior relation to the human. In Proclus's Exegesis, Dionysus represents the monad of the lower embodied realm. It is the world we inhabit, the world of becoming and birthing, dying, regeneration, and regrowth. This endless cycle of samsara, to use a Pali or Sanskrit term. It is a fluidity, never one and the same, but always in movement. It is for this reason that Proclus and Philolaus have observed that he rules over the warmer moisture of creation, as opposed to the colder moisture of his grandfather Cronos. Dionysus' water is the water that breeds creativity and procreation, ever shifting and filling the vessels and forms that enclose or contain it. But for that very reason, it seems, Dionysus is vulnerable. Similar to the watery nymphs who, quote, nurtured him, and from his lordly father took him to their bosoms to cuddle and nurse, there is a distinct watery feminine quality to his upbringing and in his nature. Dionysus is not a warrior like Ares. He does not strike with weapons. He is not the incarnation of pure masculine virility, for he embodies both qualities and transcends them, and is therefore androgynous, and for that, he is more formidable to those who oppose him. He can be like the waters, both nurturing and amenable to change, in times of turbulent waves creating white foam, or smooth and reflective as a calm sea. Along with Proteus, Thetis, and all the other gods and goddesses that inhabit the vast seas and oceans, it is possible for Dionysus to be captured, if only temporarily, in his shape-shifting domain. Leaving aside the Titans for the moment, the Homeric hymn to Dionysus has him captured by Tersenian pirates. Quote, when they saw him, they signaled to each other, and then leapt out and quickly seized him, and put him on board their ship, glad in their hearts. Intimating Dionysus' role as savior and releaser of bonds, Dionysus Lucios, the hymn continues. They thought he was the son of a Zeus-cherished king, and wanted to bind him with painful shackles. But the shackles could not hold him, and the withes fell far away from his hands and feet, and he sat there smiling and dark-eyed. In a beautiful irony, the intuition of the pirates is not entirely wrong. They have indeed captured a Zeus-cherished king, but he is no king of any earthly realm, with its limited borders and geographic location. This is the king of the realm of the all. An analogy can be made that these shackles the pirates place on him are in fact the bonds that keep our very souls enchained to its corporeal and mortal flesh. And so Dionysus, with his knowing smile, grants us an opportunity for release. Here, his other epithet as Dionysus Bacchaeus, the one who inspires divine mania and ecstatic and cathartic ritual performances, comes to the fore. The Technetai were professional choirs who performed the processional paeans of Dionysus. These processions involved singing and dancing, where his bacchantes and maenads and all his worshippers could release the deep wells of moisture that resided within the dark recesses and caverns of their bodies. Sweat that wells up through their pores to be exposed to the sun, where it is kissed and evaporated into the fiery air. An offering of steaming perspiration that alchemically transmutes water into the rarefied element of air into the atmosphere. This is a sacrifice, offering up your moisture through the madness of ecstasy, whether through your singing mouth or your gyrating, perspiring body. Carl Gustav Jung encountered something similar when he visited the East African tribe, the Ilongwe. Their morning ritual was to spit into their palms and lift it to face the rising sun, an offering of their soul's substance, their life fluid. To honor Dionysus as a theurgist, it is important to acknowledge that he represents the end point of the cosmogonic unfolding and embraces multiplicity as a totality. Although divided, he encapsulates all divided things and gathers them within himself. This is probably the most matter-of-fact obvious statement to make, for underlying our divided attention with our divided senses and divided thought forms is a reality that is constant and unchanging. Echoing Parmenides' reality, or the sphiros, is in fact stationary and outside movement and change. because there is nowhere outside of reality for it to go. That being said, we live in the material realm with all its sounds, sights, colors, smells, passions, and conflicts, and above all else, it is touchable. There is a haptic quality to it. You can feel its pressure. You can push against it, and it meets your force with equal resistance. Reality wants to be experienced and therefore seen. Dionysus wants to be seen. As the French philosopher Gaston Bachelard says in his beautiful work entitled On Poetic Imagination and Reverie, the cosmos and the world wants to see itself. In fact, he argues that Schopenhauer's conception of the will is so powerful a force in its desire to see that it will in fact create eyes for the human body to simply contemplate and feed upon its own beauty. Bachelard further quotes the French writer Victor Hugo as saying, quote, "It was one of those places where that magnificent peacock we call nature seems to strut before our eyes." An unsympathetic viewer may see the majestic peacock as embodying nothing but narcissistic self-reflection and self-absorption. But this is to entirely ignore the virtue of this creature. For in alchemical studies, Jung includes Gerhard Dorn's quote, "Again, even as natural trees bring forth diverse blossoms in their season, so the material of the stone causes the most beautiful colors to appear when it puts forth its blossoms." Jung comments in a footnote to the page, "An allusion to the many colors of the cardo pavonis, the peacock's tail, whose appearance heralds the attainment of the goal." These colors of multiplicity and multiform sensation that reflect like facets of a fractured mirror with all its variegated forms and shapes as on the tail of a peacock must be experienced every waking moment of our short lives. In the next video, we will discuss the nature of our division and how we can gather together our senses to approach Dionysus in his unitive dimension. And it is to him we must first face if we seek to regather and recollect these fragments, the mask of Dionysus.